Hello. I'm going to read from the sakkapanha sutta. This is one of the most interesting, mysterious sutras or suttas. I love it. The Buddha teaches Sakka, Indra, king of the 33 gods. Teaches him about many things actually. Teach him about the path. Sakka is a student of the Buddha. He takes refuge in the Buddha. So here I'm going to start reading from a place where the Buddha was meditating in a cave, and Sakka, king of gods, wanted to go visit. So he got a Gandharva, to come with him so that he could play music and rouse the Buddha from meditation. So they come, and the 33 gods, they all go to the mountain, go to the cave where the Buddha is sitting, and the light is bright, and the villagers down below can see that the mountain is lit up. And they all go into the cave, and Pankasika, five-crested Gandharva, sings a song, a love song, which is interesting in itself. He sings about his love for this other Gandharva woman, and he relates his desire for this woman to the monk's desire for enlightenment. And the Buddha enjoys the song, and he says, "Ooh, the sound of your voice blends so well with the sound of your instrument. When did you write this song? Like, what's it about?" And that is where Pankasika describes the love that he has for this Gandharva woman. It's funny, or it's interesting also, that elsewhere in the Digha, Nikaya, in these long discourses of the Buddha, we see that Brahma uses the form of Pankasika sometimes, because Brahma's true form is too intense. So he appears as Pankasika. But it's not said here that Pankasika is Brahma, but elsewhere in this collection we do see that. It's just an interesting thing to note. So here, the song has already been sung. The Buddha has come out of meditation and has greeted the king of the 33 gods, Sakka, or Indra. So the Lord Buddha thought, "Sakka has lived a pure life for a long time. Whatever questions he may ask will be to the point and not frivolous, and he will be quick to understand my answers." So the blessed Lord replied to Sakka in this verse, "Ask me, Sakka, all that you desire. On what you ask, I'll put your mind to rest." Being thus invited, Sakka, ruler of the gods, put his first question to the Lord. "By what fetters or chains, sir, are beings bound? Devas, humans, asuras, nagas, gandharvas, and whatever other kind there may be, whereby, although they wish to live without hate, harming, hostility, and in peace, they yet live in hate, harming, hostility, or malignity, and malign?" This was Sakka's first question to the Lord. He's wondering, we want to be peaceful. We don't really want to be hateful all the time, but it keeps happening. Why does it keep happening? This was Sakka's first question to the Lord, and the Lord Buddha replied, "Ruler of the gods, it is the bonds of jealousy and avarice that bind beings, so that, though they wish to live without hate, they yet live in hate, harming one another, hostile and malign. This was the Lord's reply, and Sakka, delighted, exclaimed, "So it is, Lord, so it is." Welfare. Through the Lord's answer I have overcome my doubt and got rid of uncertainty. It's jealousy that causes this cycle of hate. Though beings want to live in peace, jealousy is there, and they continue to attack each other. Then Sakka, having expressed his appreciation, asked another question. "But sir, what gives rise to jealousy and avarice? What is their origin? How are they born? How do they arise? Owing to the presence of what do they arise? Owing to the absence of what do they not arise?" Jealousy and avarice, says the Buddha, take rise from like and dislike, from preference, dualistic preference. This is their origin. This is how they are born, how they arise. When these are present, they arise. When these are absent, they do not arise. Then Sakka asks, "But sir, what gives rise to like and dislike? Owing to the presence of what do they arise? Owing to the absence of what do they not arise?" The Buddha replies, "They arise, ruler of the gods, from desire." And then Sakka asks, Buddha replies, "Owing to the presence of desire, they arise. Owing to the absence of desire, they do not arise." Sakka says, "But sir, what gives rise to desire?" Desire, ruler of the gods, arises from thinking. When the mind thinks about something, desire arises. When the mind thinks about nothing, when it's not active in dualistic discrimination, desire does not arise. But sir, what gives rise to thinking? Thinking, ruler of the gods, arises from the tendency to proliferation. So this is an aspect of the whole mind system. Causes leading to effects, this churning on, this proliferation of information. When this tendency is present, thinking arises. When it is absent, thinking does not arise. Well, sir, what practice has that person undertaken who has reached the right way, which is needful and leading to the cessation of the tendency to proliferation? So how does a person get beyond this samsaric mind system? Ruler of the gods, I declare that there are two kinds of happiness. The kind to be pursued and the kind to be avoided. This stuff is really potent. I love this sequence. The same applies to unhappiness and equanimity. So there's a kind of happiness to be pursued and a kind of happiness to be avoided. There's also a kind of unhappiness to be pursued and a kind of unhappiness to be avoided. There's a kind of equanimity to be pursued and a kind of equanimity to be avoided. The kind of equanimity to be avoided, in my opinion, would be like apathy, apathetic equanimity. Why have I declared this in regard to happiness? This is how I understood happiness. When I observed that in the pursuit of such happiness, unwholesome factors increased and wholesome factors decreased, then that happiness was to be avoided. So here the Buddha is talking about his own experimentation by watching his own mind as he pursues this happiness. Does does he see the increase of wholesome factors? If he doesn't, if he sees the increase of unwholesome factors, he knows this is a thing that is to be avoided. And when I observed that in the pursuit of such happiness unwholesome factors decreased and wholesome ones increased, then that happiness was to be sought after. Now, of such happiness as is accompanied by thinking and pondering, and that of which is not so accompanied, the latter is more excellent. So there's a deep happiness where the mind isn't stirred. It's not engaged in dualistic discrimination, a kind of bliss of equanimity. The same applies to unhappiness and to equanimity. And this, ruler of the gods, is the practice that monk has undertaken, who has reached the right way, leading to the cessation of the tendency to proliferation, so exiting samsara. And Sakka expressed his delight at the Lord's answer. Then Sakka, having expressed his appreciation, asked another question. Well, sir, what practice has that monk undertaken who has acquired self-control, restraint, required by the rules? So now we're talking about right conduct, morality. How does the monk, how does the person achieve right conduct? Ruler of the gods, I declare that there are two kinds of bodily conduct, the kind to be pursued and the kind to be avoided. The same applies to conduct of speech and to the pursuit of goals. Why have I declared this in regard to bodily conduct? So here again we're talking about self-experimentation. We're not simply following lists of rules. We're watching our own conduct and seeing, does this lead to the increase of wholesome factors and the decrease of unwholesome factors? And if so, we know this is a good thing to do. If we watch ourselves after engaging in some bodily conduct and we see that wholesome factors decrease and unwholesome factors increase, then we know that action is to be avoided. We're not just following rules, we're watching. We're living mindfully. So when I observe that by the performance of certain actions, unwholesome factors increased and wholesome factors decreased, then that form of bodily action was to be avoided. And when I observed that by the performance of such actions, unwholesome factors decreased and wholesome ones increased, then such bodily action was to be followed. That is why I make this distinction. The same applies to conduct of speech and the pursuit of goals. So when we're speaking, does what we're saying cause a bunch of problems, inside and outside? And when we're pursuing goals, does that pursuit cause problems? Does it increase unwholesome factors and decrease wholesome factors? If so, we don't pursue goals in that way, or we don't speak that way. Again, it's important this kind of right conduct emerges from watching ourselves. It's not simply following lists of rules. And this, ruler of the gods, is the practice that monk has undertaken, who has acquired the restraint required by the rules, self-control, restraint, the kind of conduct to followed by this monk. And Sakka expressed his delight at the Lord's answer. Then Sakka asked another question. Well, sir, what practice has that person undertaken who has acquired control of his sense faculties? Ruler of the gods, and again we're getting the same kind of description. The right conduct or the right interaction with the sense faculties emerges from mindfulness. We watch ourselves. I declare that things perceived by the eye are of two kinds, the kind to be pursued and the kind to be avoided. The Buddha uses the same formula over and over. Watch it. Does it increase wholesome factors? If it does, do that. See that. Hear that. Taste that. Smell that. We know it ourselves, directly experiencing, having a direct experiential understanding. We know if it's good or bad. The same applies to things perceived by the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. At this, Sakka said, Lord, I understand in full the true meaning of what the Blessed Lord has outlined in brief. Because the Buddha gave him a formula. It's a brief response, but a person can take that and apply it and understand it in full. Lord, whatever object perceived by the eye, if its pursuit leads to the increase of unwholesome factors and the decrease of wholesome ones, that is not to be sought after. If its pursuit leads to the decrease of unwholesome factors and the increase of wholesome ones, such an object is to be sought after. And the same applies to things perceived by the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. Thus I understand in full the true meaning of what the Blessed Lord has outlined in brief. And thus, through the Lord's answer, I have overcome my doubt and got rid of uncertainty. Then Sakka asked another question. Sir, do all wanderers and priests teach the same doctrine, practice the same discipline, want the same thing, and pursue the same goal? No, ruler of the gods, they do not. But why, sir, do they not do so? The world, ruler of gods, is made up of many and various elements. Such being the case, beings adhere to one or other of the various things, and whatever they adhere to, they become powerfully addicted to, and declare, "This alone is the truth. Everything else is false." Therefore, they do not all teach the same doctrine, practice the same discipline, want the same thing, pursue the same goal. We can apply this today, looking around at all the various religions. Like, do they all teach the same thing? No. Maybe ultimately there is some final resting place, but when we look at the various religious traditions today, we can see that they are saying different things. Some people say all religions teach one truth. Maybe, ultimately, but I don't know. Sir, are all ascetics and Brahmins, or wanderers and priests, Shramanas and Brahmins, fully proficient, freed from bonds, perfect in the holy life? Have they perfectly reached the goal? No, ruler of the gods. Why is that, sir? Only those, ruler of the gods, who are liberated by the destruction of craving are fully proficient, freed from the bonds, perfect in the holy life, and have perfectly reached the goal. So those who are free of the addictions, free of addiction, aversion, and apathy. And Sakka rejoiced at the answer as before. Then Sakka said, "Passion, sir, is a disease." So addiction is a disease. But there can also be an aversive passion. It's a boil, a dart. It seduces a person, drawing them into this or that state of becoming, so that they are reborn in high states or low. whereas other ascetics and Brahmins of differing viewpoints gave me no chance to ask these questions. The Lord has instructed me at length, and thus removed the dart of doubt and uncertainty from me. Ruler of the gods, do you admit to having asked these same questions of other wanderers and priests? Yes, Lord. Then, if you don't mind, please tell me what they said. I do not mind. I'll tell you. Then tell me, ruler of the gods. Lord, I went to those I considered to be wanderers and priests because of their solitary life in the woods, and I put these questions to them, but instead of giving me a proper answer, they asked me in return, "Who are you, venerable sir?" And then I replied that I was Sakka, ruler of the gods, and they asked me what had brought me there. Then I taught them the Dhamma as far as I had heard it and practiced it. But they were very pleased with even that much, and they said, "We have seen Sakka, the ruler of the gods, and he has answered the questions we put to him." And they became my pupils, instead of me becoming theirs. But I, Lord, am a disciple of the Blessed Lord, a stream winner, not subject to rebirth in states of woe, firmly established and destined for full enlightenment. Ruler of the gods, do you admit to having ever previously experienced rejoicing and happiness, such as you experience now? Yes, Lord. And what was that about? In the past, Lord, war had broken out between the devas and the asuras, and the devas had defeated the asuras. And after the battle, as victor, I thought, whatever is now the food of the devas, and what is the food of the asuras, henceforth we shall both enjoy. It's interesting, I just read a paper the other day about how in Iran the asuras are the good guys. In India, the asuras are the bad guys. So there's this connection between these two systems of mythology, and it's probably representative of some split in the tradition, to where in Iran the asuras were good and the devas were bad, but in India the devas are good and the asuras are bad. So here we're hearing about this same war, the same conflict between these two classes of celestial beings, devas and asuras. So there was this war, and Sakka thought there was going to be peace and that they were going to share, because the devas had defeated the asuras, and he thought it would be over now. But Lord, such happiness and satisfaction, which was due to blows and wounds, or war, does not conduce to dispassion, detachment, cessation, peace, gnosis, enlightenment, nibbana. But that happiness and satisfaction that is obtained by hearing the Dhamma from the Blessed Lord, which is not due to blows and wounds, does conduce to dispassion, detachment, cessation, peace, gnosis, enlightenment, nibbana. And, ruler of the gods, what things do you call to mind when you admit to experiencing such satisfaction and happiness as this? So the Buddha is now asking, what makes the Lord or the King of Gods happy? At what time in the past has this Sakka, King of Gods, felt this kind of bliss that he feels now upon having heard the answers to these questions? And Sakka says, Lord, at such a time 6 things come to mind at which I rejoice. So now he talks about he's going to take birth as a human, practice the Buddha's path, be reborn in the deva realms as a peerless deva, a higher deva, and he imagines that the ranks of the devas will grow and the ranks of the asuras will shrink. He says, I, who merely as a god exist, have gained the chance, by kama, of another earthly life. That, Lord, is the first thing that occurs to me. Leaving this non-human realm of gods behind, unerringly I'll seek the womb I wish to find. That, Lord, is the second thing. My problems solved, I'll gladly live by Buddha's law, controlled and mindful, and with clear awareness filled. That, Lord, is the third thing. And should thereby enlightenment arise in me, as one who knows, I'll dwell, and there await my end. That, Lord, is the fourth thing. Then when I leave the human world again, I'll be once more a god, and one of highest rank. That, Lord, is the fifth thing. More glorious than devas are the peerless devas, among whom dwelling I shall make my final home. That, Lord, is the sixth thing that occurs to me, and these are the 6 things at which I rejoice. Long I wandered, unfulfilled, in doubt. In quest of the Tathagata, I thought, hermits who live secluded and austere must surely be enlightened. I'll seek them. What must I do to gain success, and what course but leads to failure? But, thus asked, they could not tell me how to tread the path. Instead, when they found out that I am the king of gods, they asked me why I'd come to them. And I it was who taught them what I knew of Dhamma, and at that, rejoicing, they cried, It's Vasava, the Lord we've seen. But now I've seen the Buddha, and my doubts are all dispelled. My fears are allayed. And now to the enlightened one I pay homage due, to him who's drawn the dart of craving, to the Buddha, peerless Lord, mighty hero, kinsman of the sun. Just as Brahma's worshipped by the gods, so likewise today we worship you, enlightened one and teacher unsurpassed, whom none can equal in the human world, or in the heavens, dwelling of the gods. Then Sakka, ruler of the gods, said to Pankasika of the Gandhabas, who is sometimes elsewhere in this collection of texts an appearance of Brahma. Pankasika is a form that Brahma takes because his true form is too intense. As I said earlier, my dear Pankasika, you have been of great help to me for gaining the ear of the Blessed Lord, because it was Pankasika's song that roused the Buddha from meditation. For it was through your gaining his ear that we are admitted to the presence of the Blessed Lord, the Arahant, the supremely enlightened Buddha. I will be a father to you. You will be king of the Gandhabas. And then Sakka, ruler of the gods, touched the earth with his hand and called out 3 times, Homage to the Blessed One, the Arahant, the supremely enlightened Buddha. Homage to the Blessed One, the Arahant, the supremely enlightened Buddha. Homage to the Blessed One, the Arahant, the supremely enlightened Buddha. And while he had been speaking in this dialogue, the pure and spotless Dhamma-eye arose within Sakka, ruler of the gods, and he knew, whatever things have an origin must come to cessation. And the same thing happened to 80,000 devas as well. Such were the questions which Sakka, ruler of the gods, was desirous to ask, and which the Lord answered for him. Therefore this discourse is called Sakka's questions. In many ways, this sutta reminds me of a Mahayana sutra. It's really beautiful. I hope you enjoyed listening. You might read it for yourself. Maybe it'll reach you differently. Maybe it'll sink in deeper. But just reviewing that story, hearing the answers to Sakka's questions, it feels good. It makes sense. Now I'm going to sit and breathe for a second. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. If you just joined me and you want to hear the story, you can watch the video in a little bit. After I end it, it'll be available to watch again. This is the Sakkapanha Sutta, Sakka's questions. It's one of my favorites. Thank you for joining me. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.